Welcome back, everyone. I'm joined by Jim Wilson, the assistant sports editor for the Telegram and Gazette and Home Team Magazine. Another week, and we're getting closer and closer now to the playoffs. We got 1 week till the postseason.
Those power rankings ready to get the math going on?
Oh, yeah. Everyone's all over you right now about that. About
live
the power
update
rankings.
after every game on HomeTeam.com.
And that's what everyone wants. Every coach wants. Where are they going to fall? Are they going to get a home game?
Yep.
You know, who is it going to be? Are they a 7th seed? Are they a 3 seed? Looking back on the week that was, biggest win of the year, probably for anyone right now, is that Wachusett win over St. John's. Your take on the Mountaineers getting up off the mat. They had suffered two big losses in a row to Leominster, to Shepherd Hill. They get up for the #1 team in Central Mass, and they win in a physical, we're coming right at you manner.
It was, we said 2 weeks ago, we sat here and said how Wachusett needed that game. I picked them to beat Leominster because I thought they needed that win to sort of put them on that top tier Division II teams in the playoffs. They needed that landmark win, and they lost to Leominster by 4 touchdowns. And then they turned out that Shepherd Hill hung 50 on them the next week. So you sort of left them for dead a little bit in that race of pretenders and contenders for that title. They needed that win because we sat here last week, talked about how Shrewsbury might have been that go-to rivalry for St. John's, how they looked at that and said, this is the game we're circling on our calendar now. Wachusett was, the generation ago. Now this year we're looking for Shrewsbury. Right. So who knows? Wachusett comes in, and yes, they didn't have Davon Jones. He's suspended for next week. He was out last game. And so I'm sure St. John's people look at that as an asterisk game and say, okay, well, you beat them, but they didn't have their best player. So but still, that was a very good win for Wachusett, especially coming off those 2 losses, the way they lost, to come back and sort of pick themselves up and jump back into the playoff race. If it's ended right now, they have a home game with a 4 seed in the playoffs. That's huge for Wachusett. But it means nothing if they answer in the playoffs. They'll face a 5 seed, maybe Algonquin, maybe somebody else. But if they come into the playoffs, because they have this week off as a bye, because the Newton South game was gone. So they have the bye. So how do they answer that? How do they follow this up? Because if they come up and lay an egg, it's all okay. Well, it was because they didn't have Davon. And they don't want to hear that. They want it to be that win because they're a good team and they deserve that win. And I think they do. Saying all year they're a good team.
No, and I'm with you on that too. And what they did is they put a parachute on Shane Combs. And with or without Davon Jones, the week before St. John's emphatic win over Shrewsbury, it was Shane Combs who was the story. He was the show. Wachusett stopped. They controlled and handled Shane Combs. Mitch Driscoll had a great game throwing the football, continues to impress me all season long. McCarthy on both sides of the ball, having some interceptions, some big catches on offense, great athlete, and he's a gamer. And you got kids that compete and get up for a game. That's a huge win for Wachusett, and it shows them right now going into the playoffs, because you mentioned they have a bye now, which is a great time. I mean, as a coach, it's maybe good and bad. Like, okay, you'd like one more win to help you with the points.
Especially after this win, you want to sort of build off it.
It's not bad to get 2 weeks to prepare for the playoffs, to get healthy, to kind of get your legs back under you, get in the weight room a little bit, push yourself for 3 or 4 days because you know you're not playing this weekend. You got guys that are gamers, and you got guys right now that have confidence that, hey, if we play our game, we can hang with anyone.
Exactly. I think that's what they're looking for, because you go into the playoffs and they start winning a couple games. You look at Bartlett last year, beating Auburn that first week, and all of a sudden they find themselves in the title game. So I think that was big for them, because you can see how those teams get. It doesn't matter when you're good. It doesn't matter when you get those wins. It's when you're good. So you come down, you get those playoff wins, you get out at the right time. You can go in as this 8 seed and still make some noise and not playing at Gillette. You don't know what's going to happen with these playoffs.
Yeah, Bill Parcells used to always say, come playoff time, it's not the best team that wins, it's the team that's playing the best that wins. Shepherd Hill beating St. Peter Marion over the weekend, giving Chris Lindstrom his 100th career coaching victory. The Hill, as advertised. I mean, when they're healthy, and I'd love to see a healthy Shepherd Hill and Leominster rematch. I know that they're not going to happen because it's Division IV, Division II, but Drew-Jean Guillaume playing now, what they're doing is, because of his cramping issues, he's not playing defense, he's not playing special teams, he's just playing offense. He's such a huge weapon just because of his running ability. I mean, he can throw, and he runs that offense very well with his footwork and pivoting and reverse open pivots, running the double wing. But he is a runner. When they run that quarterback sweep or the quarterback power, man, that's so tough to defend.
He just needs that one block to spring him, because he's, like you said, he's such a great athlete. He can run better than probably anybody in Central Mass, especially when he gets that open lane. He's gone. Nobody's going to catch. I don't think anybody's going to catch Drew-Jean from behind. I just don't think it's going to happen.
And he's physically strong.
Exactly. So I think you look at that, and like I said, they're putting him on offense, which shows how good Shepherd Hill is.
I know.
Because he was very good on defense. To lose that kind of weapon, to put him on the side because you have that luxury. You can plug the next man up. For Shepherd Hill comes in and puts it, plugs that hole, and they're fine. Because, I mean, they put it together last week against St. Peter Marion. They had a
Right.
good second half. They were, sort of feeling each other out. And St. Peter Marion showed me a lot in that game
Yes.
just by hanging with them as long as they did. And then Shepherd Hill sort of turned the Jets on at the end. But that was a great job for Shepherd Hill to sort of figure out what was wrong, what they can do to fix it, and what's going to take them to get the win the rest of the way. They gave Coach Lindstrom his 100th win.
Yeah, and it was a great high school football game. As you mentioned, hats off to St. Peter Marion for playing like they did. They hung right with them. This was it was a one-point game. It was a one-touchdown game. Late in the game, and Seamus Leary, I think, did a great job. Offensively, he's got great stats, and you're going to look at his running touchdown, his throwing touchdown. But what impressed me was the way he played defensively. He was very physical. He was coming downhill from that safety position, in on a lot of tackles, made a difference defensively. And that whole Guardian team really stepped up.
Right, exactly. I think they have a lot. Like we just talked about how Wachusett needed that win in the playoffs. I think St. Peter Marion did the same thing. Sort of, it was a loss. You look at, I think St. Peter Marion, I think North, and I think Maynard both showed a lot. Even though they lost, they showed they belong in the discussion of teams that could walk away with a title because of the way they presented themselves and what they did on the field. Even though it didn't work out the way they did, it's a lot of confidence coming because you're not going to see these teams, right away in the playoffs. So
Right.
I think that they can sort of build off that and have a nice, nice last week and then go into the playoffs in a row.
All right, you talked about North and a good loss for North, and that certainly was taking Doherty down to the wire. The Polar Bears led in the second half of that game. Doherty has to come back to win that game. Doherty showing a great champion's heart and winning the city title. North in that city championship game is great in the first place for them, but then for them to be there and to be there back and forth and for them to be able to look at the tape and say, hey, listen, 3 or 4 plays go differently in here, and we're the city champs, and we're the ones winning. Credit Eric Vesey, the quarterback for Doherty, and leading that Highlanders team back. I think he's underrated because he's very accurate, got a great arm, but you got to give North a lot of credit in this one.
It's one of those games where even though there's only one winner, both teams can take a lot of things out away. Like you said, Doherty could take away from the fact they were in a battle and they came out the winning. They were able to regroup and win at the end. Big win for them because North is showing every week it's a better game, a better team than people think they are. But North, for the first time in a while, they played their varsity from the first to the fourth quarter against Doherty. And I'm sure in the last couple of years when their program's been down, it hasn't been the case. And I think that was a big win for them to show they belong. Because a lot of people, I think, were looking at North thinking they're a good team, but who have they played? Who have they beaten? I mean, they played the Uxbridge and they lost. And I'm sure that was a game that they look at and they say we want to have back. But the same token, it's like one of those, they're good, but they haven't played anybody, so they had a chance to sort of turn a lot of heads in Doherty. And the fact that they played with them from whistle to whistle showed a lot how far that program has come in the last couple of years under Dan Boyle.
And we look at the Maynard-Littleton game, and you touched on Maynard too, another one that it's a loss, but you can take a lot away from. Maynard-Littleton goes into overtime. Littleton wins on the road. Littleton's got that great winning streak going, 18 wins now. But again, going into overtime, Maynard with some key pieces missing and taking them down to the wire. My man Billy, who emailed me and said, I'm always talking up that 1986 team. He believes the 91 team was even better. They were 10-1, lost to eventual Division II Super Bowl champion Hudson. He thinks they were better than the 86 team. But how about this 2014 Maynard Tiger team? They belong in that conversation too.
They showed me a lot. Like I said, we started talking about last week how it was a game for them to prove themselves a little bit, and that being that statement, with Littleton and with Valley Tech, I think that was a big thing for them, especially without Peterson. Losing Peterson to a leg injury before the game normally would be a crushing blow to a lot of teams, especially going against Littleton, one of the best teams, one of the benchmarks in Division VI for the last couple of years. State champions and everything. So they're coming into that game with one of the biggest weapons on the sidelines. I'm sure a lot of people will say, okay, well, Maynard maybe next time. Maybe in the playoffs they can regroup and something can happen. They fought, they were a couple plays away, like you said. They lost in overtime. They showed a lot to me in that program, just to be in that game as well as they did. They can, rematch. Who knows what can happen in that game. I think Maynard, right there, like I said, Littleton, Valley Tech, Division VI, they're right up there with them. And it'll come out to seedings and who plays what and where. I mean, for the first time in a while, people care about playing Maynard football, and on that team, it's a point of pride to put on that uniform. I think that goes a lot to say to Harold Ogilvie and his staff for coming to that program on the downturn and putting it into where it is now.
Right, and there's a lot of pride in that community in the black and orange, and as evidenced with the literature that we're getting from Billy and some of the gang. The old Maynard alums. Billy's been watching since the '60s. I still love that '86 team, Billy, but I'm biased because they beat me twice. All right, top 4. If we had to start a playoff right now, and we're saying we're taking the top 4 teams in Central Mass, and we're going to have a playoff. And what's your top 4? Because now
we always talk
with
about
Wachusett with the big win over St. John's, you look at in the mix anyway. Leominster, Shepherd Hill, St. John's, Wachusett, and Northbridge. So to me, it's 5 teams for 4 spots.
Right, and that's always. I feel like you and me, Lacombe and Flanny should go down to the old timer. We'll bring Carl. What the heck? And we'll just talk about this. This is one of those things we always like to break down with like Auburn and Holy Name back in those Super Bowl run years. How would they fare against these teams?
Right.
So yeah, I think you look at my poll for the Telegram had Leominster at 1. I had St. John's. And I had Shepherd Hill and Northbridge in there. And I think those 4 teams, as much as I like Wachusett for those, but we talked earlier about how they had those 2 losses when they had a chance. If they won one of those 2 games to Leominster and Shepherd Hill, I'd put them in that conversation. But to me, they had the chance to jump into the mystical 4 head-to-head, and they came up in a losing end. So I would put Leominster and St. John's and Northbridge and Shepherd Hill in that dream foursome.
And I think it would be a blast to see Northbridge taking on these teams. And we've said it before, they may not have the size of the school and the depth of the program with so many kids to play week in and week out at the Division II level, but they could play in a 2-game series, a 2-game playoff, semis and the finals. They could play, and I'd love to see teams trying to stop Kobe Schofer and Jake Wood and all those weapons that they have. Chandler Brooks, it's just such a powerful team.
And they get teams like Valley Tech and Littleton, those D6 teams, and they want a piece of this too.
Right.
Oxbridge is 6-0, and they're in Division 5. They'd love a chance to have a legitimate win. They have a chance against Bartlett this week. But I mean, so you have a lot of teams that would love to have that respect of being one of the best, the Big 4.
One of the top teams. All right, looking ahead to this week, and you mentioned the Bartlett-Uxbridge game. We'll start with that one. It's a big game. Big game, 2 teams. And in their division, it's okay. Who's at it's the 2 big kids in the schoolyard. Who's going to emerge? That's
right. I mean, I talked earlier about the problem with people are saying about North is they really hadn't beaten anybody.
Right.
I mean, but I think both these teams look at it and say, why aren't they ranked in the poll? Why aren't they getting votes? And because they look at their schedule and they're beating teams that good teams should beat. And I'm not trying to throw shade on these teams because they're very good. But you look at Bartlett. They beat David Prouty week 1, and they're 4-2. That's the only team they've beaten with a winning record. They had a chance against Northbridge to sort of turn them edge. We talked about in this show how they, this was a chance for their coming out, sort of just we belong in the discussion party. And other than that first spurt at the beginning of the game, there's 35-7 Northbridge in the 4th quarter. So they lost a lot of opportunity to sort of be in that discussion earlier. But beating Oxbridge, I think, puts them back into it. And like we talked about earlier in the show, Bartlett knows firsthand how it takes. If they get hot at the end, a win over Oxbridge heading into the playoffs does a lot for that program. I mean, if they get Givens back, and they have a great backfield and one of the best lines in Central Mass.
Right.
And they have Givens and Cadell and James Patterson and Harry Lee. They have guys that can get the job done. So I think if they look at a statement win over Oxbridge, I think that would do a huge thing for that program.
Leominster and Shrewsbury, and we don't have much time with this, maybe 30 seconds, but Shrewsbury's coming off a win a week ago over Westboro. 2 weeks ago is when they lost to St. John's. They have another one of the Big 4 there, another one of the heavies taking on Leominster. Another chance to prove themselves against arguably the 1 or 2 top teams in the area.
I think looking at Leominster, they've really righted the ship. We can't talk about enough of the fact that how the first 2 weeks, 0-2 coming back, and Shepherd Hill and Wachusett and Doherty and Shoba with those wins, they showed a lot. So if Shrewsbury can come in again, I hate to keep harping on being in this drum, but to get a win against Leominster in the playoffs, especially how tight Division II is going to be, that's huge.
And they didn't have Eddie Rivera for weeks 1 and 2.
Exactly. They found
Leominster,
this kid.
and you see what he's done, whether he's running the football or he's in the Wildcat, he's a huge difference maker.
Don't you love being in Leominster? Just going out to your best running back gets hurt, go out to the running back tree, pulling off.
Here, we'll put some pads on him, and he's going to be a difference maker. We did not forget about Holy Name in Auburn. We got about 10 seconds, but Holy Name's big win over Auburn. Big for that program and for all the work that they're putting in, and it's a young team,
It's great. I love this. Pucko talked to him at the beginning of the year. He wasn't sure what he had. They just, it's one of the typical Pucko team. Week 1 is drastically different than what you see from week 8 and 9.
And North and Algonquin, going to be a good game as well this weekend.
When's the last time North and Algonquin was going to be a good game? Credit to both those
this
coaches.
Late in the season.
Huge for them.
You're right, Jim. All right, that's Jim Wilson of Home Team Magazine and the Telegram and Gazette. We are out of time, but we're back with more of the Frenzy Extra right after this.